question is a non-political one. Would you kindly share us an update on the KIND project in terms of any people, et cetera, about bringing kids in need of desks in Africa?
Yeah, and
thank you
explain,
very
please,
much.
what that is for the benefit of the uninitiated.
Yeah, so I created what we call the KIND Fund, Kids in Need of Desks, for providing desks to schools in Africa where it's not just that they don't have them, they've never seen them. They don't really know that this is an option. And that's actually in most schools in probably most African countries, actually. And this is centered in Malawi, and it's become a serious jobs program in Malawi because thanks to our audience's contributions, we now have 4 different factories in Malawi that are making these desks and delivering them to schools. And it really changes the kids' lives. We added a component to it, which is scholarships for girls to go to high school, because public school is free in most African countries only for elementary school, and high school you have to pay something, and by our standards it's next to nothing, but it's more than a year's pay for the average worker in Malawi. And so we've added that. Girls, it's harder for them to go to high school because if the family can afford to send one of the kids to high school, it's most likely going to be one of the boys and not one of the girls. And so our audience has done this for us. All I do is share my experience of being there and working on this, and the audience has just been stunningly generous and kind, I have to say. And so it's really, for me, what the show is about. And you know, everybody has those days where they're done with this job, right? No matter what it is, no matter where you are. And I promise you, that happens in this job. And so Greg Kordick, my executive producer, has a very simple technique whenever I'm sitting there talking about how I don't want to do this. Is it?
The end is near.
I hate this. No, the end is like now. Like I'm going home. I hate this. And he'll just say, you know, they still need some desks.
Right, so come back to work the next day. It's great. Good, Lawrence. Good. Hi, Joan.
Hi. Thank you again for coming down to the hinterlands.
What is this thank you? Like, is this some outpost that no one comes to? What, are you kidding me? I wanted to keep them down here.
Sort of. All weekend, there's been a lot of discussion of journalism and the bump in journalism and the doubling of the size of the Post newsroom and audience viewership and so on. And some of it has been attributed to the person currently in office at the presidency, who is very media savvy and knows how to draw attention to himself and issues. Several presidencies leading up to that have also, I think, stirred interest. But you mentioned episodic television. You've been a writer for West Wing. There's been Sopranos. There's been Mad Men. Viewer interest falls off after a while. Do you think if we get whatever would be a more normal presidency and federal government, and that will people stop paying attention?
Will it become like the
happen
13th
to
season of
journalism?
ER when John Stamos joined the cast?
Yeah.
And the show was over, only they didn't know it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, it'll drop off, and that's a good thing. If in the next election, if you get a stable Democrat in the White House, our viewership will continue for a couple of months where it is, and then it'll be cut by half at minimum, because no one will be sitting there wondering if this unhinged person in the White House is going to do something profoundly dangerous and damaging to the world or to them that day or in the next minute. They'll be able to get on with their lives. They'll be able to use their phone for phone calls. And that will be a good thing.
You're pulling for normal and therefore half the ratings, or are you on Team Avenatti?
Okay, wow. President Avenatti, I think, would keep the ratings up. But no, I'm perfectly happy to watch my ratings collapse into a world of normalcy.
Good. Ma'am.
Wrap
rapturous West Wing fan. My question to you is, what was your favorite character and what was your favorite storyline? Which storyline are you most proud of?
Now we're talking. This is the serious stuff.
All right, well, there were 154 episodes, and I was there for the first 2 years, and then I left for 2 years and created another show. Then I came back for the final 3 years, so that season, season 3 and 4 I had nothing to do with. But I've never quite been able to answer that. I did write the only live episode of The West Wing. It was a live debate episode in the final season. Jimmy Smits and Alan Alda
right,
running
yeah,
for
right,
president.
right.
And that was a unique pleasure. It was actually the longest West Wing episode by far because NBC dropped some of the commercial breaks. And it's the only script which is actually pure dialogue. And so it's by far the most dialogue ever written in an hour of television because it's just eventually just two guys standing on a stage and it's just that talk. So there's a uniqueness to that, and it was like putting on a play. We did it twice. We did it live for the East Coast, live for the West Coast. We did rehearsals, which is something, a couple of weeks of rehearsals. You normally do a couple of minutes of rehearsal of a scene of a TV series. So it had all sorts of elements to it that were unique and special, but it's very hard to talk about a favorite character. They were all just so wonderful and powerful, and some of the characters who didn't have as much real estate in the show, like Janelle Maloney as Donna, she's just such an exquisite actress, and she's in a company with Allison Janney, and so what I found impossible is for everybody who deserves the real attention that they should have. It's kind of impossible for them to get it because Richard Schiff or Brad Whitford or Martin Sheen or Alan Alda standing beside them. Or Jimmy
You've only got
Smits or
60
something.
minutes less the commercial
Yeah,
time, right?
so
That's it.
it's one of those labors of love in which everything about it is like being a member of a large family, and you're asking me who my favorite child is.
But what's remarkable to me is that show, unlike an awful lot of episodic shows over the years, has had all this interest in subsequent years, long after it's off the air. The new generation of TV watchers have gone back to watch the entire series, talk rapturously about that show, and people actually say, I wish actual government were like the fake government that you created.
Yeah, it has a new life now, and that's all thanks to Netflix and this permanence of television. When we were writing it, we knew this is going to be seen twice. The NBC is going to run it, and then they're going to do a rerun of it, and that's the end of it. It's very unlikely for this show to have a big syndication life the way Law and Order does, because syndication is, the episodes can't have a sequence to them. You have to be able to shuffle them like a deck of cards, which is the Law and Order principle.
The one-offs.
Yeah, one-offs. And so we knew there would be probably no real syndication life, and this was basically it. We never dreamed that they were going to kind of live forever. And I'm constantly getting 28-year-olds and 24-year-olds tell me I just started watching it, and that's fantastic. And I've had to watch it in the last couple of years a few times because there's a West Wing Weekly podcast that Josh Molina, one of the cast members, does, which is quite brilliant and wonderful and fun to do. And so he had me come in to talk about a script I'd written about, I think, a week ago. And so I had to watch it. And I realized, no, I have to watch the one before, because I have to see it. And then the one I wrote referred to a script I didn't work on from season 4 that Aaron Sorkin had written. I have to go in and watch the one that I was basing this on. And it's so much fun for me, and this might sound odd, but it's so much better than I thought. Because when you're in it, and you're doing it, and you're making that sausage, you're aware of every imperfection, you're aware of every compromise you made. You're aware of those little things that you cut because the episode was, 45 minutes and 50 seconds, and it needed to be 45 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yep.
And you're sitting there in Warner Brothers in the editing room, and you're cutting out this moment with Allison Janney that, just it kills you that you're cutting it out. And so you're a little bit pissed off at the end of this, you know, that NBC has done this to you in the cutting and all that, and you're sitting there saying, if this was an HBO show, and you know, all that. You have all that frustration, and then Snuffy Walden comes in and does this beautiful music for the episode, and you put it all together, and then it would come on TV in those days, Wednesday at 9 p.m., and I'd watch it then, and everything that every battle that I lost in the making of that script, I would notice was not as important as I thought, because it would go by at 100 miles an hour.
Yep.
And now when I watch it, I can't remember a single battle.
You know what? That's great. That's great. I love that answer.
Hi there.
Ma'am.
I remember Mr. Sterling.
Oh, Mr. Sterling's the show I created when I left the West Wing, starring Josh Brolin as an appointed senator that lasted about 10 episodes. And then, too bad about Josh, he disappeared.
Yes, whatever happened to him?
I don't know.
I'm just curious. I want to say that you were talking about the ratings boost with you and Maddo about the emotion factor, which is true. But one of the reasons why I appreciate your show so much is that you give me context for what we're seeing. It's not just, that's weird, isn't it? You can come along and say, this is weird because this is the tradition, this is where it could have gone, and I appreciate the context. Thank you very much. And if we get back to normal, do you think news might actually start covering the rest of the planet?
Yeah, we're going to have to, because if you get to normal, Washington will only deliver about 30 minutes of what you're going to cover if you get to normal, and it actually makes the job harder, because once you start looking at the rest of the culture, it becomes tricky. What you decide to do. But a friend of mine, Josh Singer, who was a West Wing writer, who won an Oscar for Spotlight, the story about the Boston Globe reporters investigating the priest sex scandals. Josh has a new movie coming out called First Man, with Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong going to the moon. It's a phenomenally wonderful movie that I saw at the Toronto Film Festival. It's fantastic. I would like to have Josh come on and talk and do a final, the last 5 minutes of the show. Talk about that experience. I'm not going to do it, and I've told him I'm not going to do it. Because we can schedule it, but it's not going to happen.
Right.
I'm going to bump you because Trump's going to do something.
Right.
Something's going to happen.
The irony of that, just since you brought that up, the irony of that is that show is actually, that film has, in advance of its release, become controversial politically. Here in Texas, Ted Cruz has been on the campaign trail complaining about that film because the scene of Neil Armstrong planting the flag is not in the film.
Right.
And this is taken as another liberal Hollywood.
When Ted continues to not see the movie that he's talking about, when he sees it many years from now on Netflix, he's going to be very surprised to see the planted flag, because the planted flag is in the movie.
So you've just made news.
Yeah, it's in the movie. Now, what you don't see is that moment that you all saw on television when Armstrong plants the flag. Now, why would you make a movie about something you've all seen on television and decide what we're going to show you is what you saw on television? Okay, so when you make a movie about something that has been on television, whatever that true story is, your obligation is to tell us the story that we did not see on television. And so the most cliche moment that you could possibly do would be to have that flag planting moment. The flag is there, and you see it, and in a way it's so much more powerful, in the ways you see it. You see it through the window of the space capsule, as they're leaving and all of this. But even that, like that little flag controversy, we would be doing that, but it doesn't rise to the level of the importance that you need to get into our show now.
Okay. Sir, I'm just keeping a careful eye on, we've got time for this question. We may not get to every question, and I apologize for that, but let's do what we can, sir.
I'm glad you're optimistic about where we are, but I have two questions that are related. One is, how do you repair the environment with 2 more years of Trump just doing everything he can to destroy it? And what do you do about lifetime appointments of judges that are going to support that?
Right. Well, that's an excellent point. One thing that has been said repeatedly is that it's going to take 50 years to undo, and that may be an exaggeration. It's going to take 50 years to undo what has been done in the last 2. If you don't like what's been undone, not everybody will like what's been done or dislike what's been done, but it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I think, look, in 1969, 10,000 people, for the first time in history, people decided to protest the inauguration of a president of the United States. And 10,000 anti-war protesters protested the inauguration of Richard Nixon. They were not protesting with optimism. They had been protesting for a couple of years at that point to try to stop the war in Vietnam. They found a candidate to run on that principle, Gene McCarthy. Another candidate jumped in running on the same principle. The other candidate who jumped in, Bobby Kennedy, got assassinated. Gene McCarthy lost. He didn't get the nomination. And there was no anti-war candidate in the end with Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon running against each other. There was no serious anti-war candidate for them to even vote for. And so when you get to the inauguration of Richard Nixon in 1969, the word hopeless is not strong enough to describe the feeling of the people who are protesting that election. It is not a strong enough expression of what they're feeling. They continue to protest, and they don't win for years, but they eventually do win. And it did not take, not only do they stop the war in Vietnam, they make America realize after the fact that we were actually wrong. And the number of people 5 years after the Vietnam War was over who would stand up and say to you, we were right to fight the Vietnam War, the number of politicians who would say that was exactly 0. Ronald Reagan did not run for president in 1980 on the glories of American warfare in Vietnam and say how smart we were to do that. Would never mention it, would never defend it for 1 second. We left it behind. And we stayed quiet about it, basically, as you do with wounds. And the wound was healing when we weren't looking at it. And now, the world you live in now, Vietnam is a tourist destination for Americans. We have full and normal relations and trade relations with Vietnam. And when the incoherent President of the United States names you the countries that he hates and names you the countries that he wants to impose crippling tariffs on, crippling for the United States, not for them, he never, ever, ever says the word Vietnam. Never once. Now, if we were sitting here in 1970, in the middle of that raging war, and someone were to say to you, the Vietnam wound will heal, you had no right to believe that.
Wouldn't have believed it.
And no one would have believed it. And if they said to you it will heal in less than 50 years, there's absolutely no way you'd believe that. Look at how quickly the wound healed between the United States and Germany. I mean, let's remember, we've had much, much, much worse things going on in our world. Much worse things that we had to find our way out of emotionally and policy-wise than we have now. If America responds to this correctly, this will not be one of the durable stains. This will be something that this country could heal itself from very quickly.
Okay. I'm afraid that we're sort of at the end here.
I could go on and on.
I know you could. I want to respect Lawrence's need to get back to the East Coast and respect all of your needs to get back out to the world on this Sunday. I'm going to sleep. Thank you, Lawrence. What a great morning. What a great way to spend time.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll see you.